Hello and welcome to Mash Talk, Mashable's own Google Plus Hangout, where today we are talking about Samsung's big week, where they introduced not one, not two, not three, but four new products yesterday at IFA in Berlin, as well as an event here in New York City. So we're going to be talking about the Galaxy Note 4, the Galaxy Note Edge, the Gear S smartwatch, which they technically announced last week, and also the Gear VR. So thank you all for joining us. If you have questions during this Hangout, you can tweet them with the hashtag MashTalk or ask them here in our Q&A app here on Google+. I'm Ryan Lytle, Social Projects Manager here at Mashable, and joining me today is Pete Paschal, our Tech Editor,
Hello.
and Christina Warren, our Senior Tech Analyst.
Hi there.
Yeah, and so we're going to start off with the actual event. Like I said, there was an event at IFA in Berlin as well as in New York City.
And Beijing.
And Beijing, sorry, and Beijing. So I found it interesting that Samsung announced all four products, at least in the Berlin event, in roughly like 3 to 5 minutes. It was just rapid fire. So what did you guys think overall about the events in general, and how they've compared to previous Samsung events?
Well, I actually like the format this year. It was a little weird as a news organization. With these live events, you always need to sort of react to what's happening in one place or another. But in terms of doing the multi-city thing, they've done in previous years is they've had the main event wherever it is, whether it's New York or Berlin or Barcelona, and the other venues just kind of watch the event, which is always a little meh. It's always a little, okay, there's an event, but we're not there. And this time they opted to have, the local executives or the executives dedicated to that region do as sort of a separate unveiling, which was kind of it's kind of makes it a little more disconcerting, but it actually makes it feel much more event-like. I thought overall as sort of a decision, it was a good one. Because they all talked about the same stuff anyway. It was just everyone got a chance to sort of have their moment in the spotlight, and also put the emphasis on which products they wanted to emphasize for whatever particular market there is.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that it was a good decision to have the separate events run separately. I was actually in New York kind of helping kind of manage things. Pete was at the event. I was at our offices. And so I was watching the Berlin live stream. And compared to past live streams, it was a little bit better, I think. I mean, it certainly wasn't the fiasco like when they were at Radio City Music Hall and tried to do the musical. They're getting better with their presentation skills. I still think that they have a lot of work to do with pacing. I actually would be interested to hear from Pete what he thought of the pacing, and I guess how the local execs in New York came across, and if you think that was a stronger presentation than maybe what they were doing in Berlin. And maybe, I don't know, this is just hypothesis on my part, but I kind of have the feeling that they might do better if they had maybe some of the U.S. executives leading the charge on a lot of these presentations, as opposed to trying to find some sort of local media personality, or having some of the executives from Asia who granted can speak English much better than I can speak Korean, but sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect if you're trying to go for a global audience and get the messaging out. What did you think of the pacing in the New York event?
It was fine. It was a little there was a little less spectacle. It was a smaller audience. It was basically just the press and a few analysts. I definitely was surprised that in Berlin it was such a rapid-fire thing. I mean, you'd think as the main event with the big crowd, you'd want to draw it out a little more. So, yeah, Samsung doesn't seem to quite know how to do that. They either go big on the spectacle and get crazy, or it's very by the numbers. All right, here's the thing. So they can't quite get sort of a good sort of comfort space in between the two. For the U.S., I thought it was a very competent product launch. It was kind of like they didn't waste a ton of time with preamble. They realized they had 4 products to get through, and they got through them all in a relatively quick amount of time. It was maybe 35, maybe 40, and they just kind of banged them all out and gave a very top line focus on each one. But you definitely got, with the combination of the videos and there's good presentation. I mean, Ryan Biden, who's their marketing head here in Samsung US, he does a very good job every time to sort of make sure the message on each product is very focused. So, I think in terms of strength, I would say the U.S. presentation, although it's not the strongest one I've seen, I think it was the most tightly focused and gave everyone sort of a good feeling of what they were actually trying to do, probably more so than Berlin.
Great. And so, we've talked about the event, so let's get to the products. We're going to start with the Galaxy Note 4. And actually, we had ran a poll in our live blog yesterday asking which product people were most excited about. And roughly 80% of those votes, and it was over 1,000 votes on among this, had voted for the Note 4, but we'll actually talk about the Edge in a bit because that also has sparked a lot of interest as well. But Pete, in your piece that you wrote when it launched, you said that the Note 4 looks poised to possibly steal the flagship phone title from the Galaxy S5. So tell us a little bit about some of the features and what we can expect with this phone.
Yeah, and I think I'd even remove possibly at this point. I mean, it's basically Samsung's flagship phone now because it's the most sophisticated phone they've ever released. I mean, this is basically has all the features, all of them, of the Galaxy S5, plus an even better processor, plus it has that Quad HD display, which isn't the first phone to have Quad HD. It's not even the first mainstream phone to have a Quad HD display, but it is the first Quad HD from Samsung. So it's a big deal. I mean, they've put all their phone technology into this product, and if you look at the market, you can see why. I mean, phablets are huge in Asia, other parts of the world. You might look at it as an American and like, wow, that a big phone with a stylus. I don't really want that, and you're probably right, but lots of people do, and Samsung is a global company first, and they're clearly addressing that with this phone. They're very confident it's going to sell really well. I predict it will. The Quad HD display looks really good. They've added some really good features for the everyday, so even separate from the productivity kind of stuff they do with the stylus. You can have the camera has optical image stabilization, which is very handy. So if you zoom in on stuff, you can basically get sharper images that minimizes the camera shake. Also, the quick charge is something a lot of people are going to love. You can go from 0 charge to 50% in just 30 minutes. That's pretty good. So these kind of everyday concerns people have with phones, they've really dedicated to them. And oh wait, there's a stylus too, and there's all this stuff. I don't know that many people who use it, that many people who go for that sort of productivity model of drawing on their phone or writing on their phone with handwritten notes. But for the people who do, and there's a significant chunk of them, this is probably the best thing you can buy in this form factor. So they've basically done upgraded that whole experience too. So I mean, this is it. I mean, phablets are in. This is their leading product. There's certainly going to be a Galaxy S6 or a Galaxy T if they decide to rename the whole line. I don't know next year. But I mean, this is I think going forward, and there's always going to be like a phone for that crowd with no stylus that's a little smaller. But now I think we're going to see the breakthrough innovations in the September Note launch, and that we've certainly seen that this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you're absolutely right, Pete. I mean, it's interesting because for the Galaxy S3 and even for the S4, that was definitely the big focus. But I think with the Note 3 being a really strong product and the Note 4 has, like you said, everything that the Galaxy S5 had. And the Galaxy S5 got kind of mixed reviews and sales haven't really seemed to have been screaming. But I really noticed last year, I guess with the Note 3, that Samsung was putting a lot more emphasis on making the Note more than just kind of like a bigger S5 or Galaxy S series, more than just a bigger device. And I think with the QHD stuff as well as really making better processors and some of the stuff they're doing with the stylus is really informative of that. And not to mention the fact that this is working with the VR headset and then some of the different things they're doing with form factor.
Yeah, I would say just for anyone who has a Galaxy Note and gets this phone or there'll probably be a software upgrade to previous Notes too, but the big thing that they've done with the stylus, it's copy and pasting is actually much easier now. And that is something everyone does on their phones, like whether it's fingertip or not. So, if you've never used your stylus on the Galaxy Note, try copying and pasting, particularly when this comes out. You might actually start using the other stuff. That to me might be sort of the gateway drug into using the stylus more. But, we'll see. But they definitely made it as easy as it's ever been on this one, and very precise too.
Yeah, and of course we've gotten some questions about release date. I believe it's coming in the fall, but we don't know exactly when. Correct?
Yeah, there's no release date, no price yet even. So I remember last year the Note 3 actually debuted at 300 with a contract, I believe.
Right,
A little
it did.
high. It'll be interesting because I know we're also going to talk about the Galaxy Edge, and there's a big question on now how much that's going to cost. So if they do the same pricing as last year and do 300, I kind of shudder to think what the Galaxy Note Edge is going to be. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, so that's actually a good segue. We're gonna talk about the Galaxy Note Edge now, and before I was talking about this poll, like I said, the Note 4 was the runaway in this poll. But in terms of the feedback and some of the things that we were hearing from the Mashable audience, a lot of people are really intrigued by the Note Edge, and so. What is really important here about that, Pete? I'm going to start with you because I know in your piece you have the headline that the Galaxy Edge looks like the future. So, what does that future entail?
Well, let me see if I can try to articulate this. I make the analogy with wearables. So wearables like smartwatches, smart glasses, they're very head turning. People look, oh, what's that? But there's kind of an inherent geek factor in them. Smartwatches less so than stuff like Google Glass, but I mean, you kind of, oh, it turns your head, and then you realize, oh, it's this kind of thing that looks curious, but I don't know if a lot of people would use. But the Galaxy Note Edge kind of has that head-turning factor without as much of the geek factor. I wouldn't say it doesn't have it entirely, but, it's kind of like people would turn their head, check it out, and then look at this cool phone with this, really kind of good-looking curved screen, which does some cool stuff. And I think they were like, whoa, that's kind of neat. And I kind of get it right away. You kind of have this little, screen buddy almost with oh, you have sort of extra stuff there, and it goes away when you're kind of immersed in the main screen. So, it just looks really futuristic. I mean, it's this, curved thing that glows off the side of your phone. It's blingy. It's neat. It's gonna the thing we do now obviously is you sit down somewhere, you put your phone down, whether it's you're at the bar or in a meeting or whatever, and this is something that's definitely gonna be like, whoa, what's that? And it's something I think Samsung wisely knows that and didn't just put this feature in a throwaway phone. This is the exact same specs as the Galaxy Note 4, so it's their flagship again. It's a cutting-edge phone just with this extra thing. So that's going to be key to getting influencers who need to adopt this for this kind of design to take off. Because if you're an influencer, if you're someone who wants this, something the latest and greatest, you're not going to settle for a mid-range phone with just a quirky thing. So I think it's going to find an audience. It's not going to be that big at the start, but it's going to be something that isn't quite just a flash in the pan. I think it's going to be the start of at least some experimental stuff. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm a little excited about it.
Yeah, no, I love the design. I think that it looks very, very futuristic, as Pete said. But I think that the way that they're releasing an API and people can build apps and notification things for it, I think actually has a lot of potential, assuming it can get developer adoption. I mean, that always is Samsung's big problem, is that they have these really innovative features and then they have a really hard time getting people on board with it. But I feel like this actually has some possibilities. I mean, Pete, you were telling me earlier about, they have things like, a ruler, as one of the different things you can have, and you can have a screen set up, for your clock. And when we talk about wearables, one of the big things, whether it's for your face or for your wrist or whatever, is all about contextual items, notifications, and that I think is a huge potential here. Whether you're at the bar, whether you have something in a case or otherwise, that you could have alerts and get information, like weather or stock or other types of information, just kind of at a glance and kind of be swipeable. I think there's some synergy there. I think if they what would be really smart is if they would make a way for apps that maybe you build for, the Gear smartwatch and some of the other things to work with the Edge display, because I think that would maybe bring in a lot of those things, because I think that they have a lot of the same potential use cases for people, because you kind of want that glanceable data. But I think the design is actually really cool.
Yeah, what it does, I think, for a lot of apps is it's going to give us a lot of developers the opportunity to get rid of some chrome, so you kind of have stuff in the, you got to have menus and back buttons and what have you. And now, Samsung did a good job of this with just the built-in camera app on the Note Edge. It's that all that control stuff can just go on that strip, and then your main screen is nothing but content. And that, I think, is going to be a big deal. Like, not at the start, but should these kind of this form factor sort of take off, it's going to be like, oh, so I have this opportunity to throw my buttons up there. It's not going to work for every app, but it's going to work for, I think, a lot. So that's just alone. That alone is, I think, is going to designers are going to go, yes, this is what I wanted. But yeah, the ruler's super fun. I mean, it's a ruler. Why not? It's right on the edge. Why wouldn't you want a ruler? And then there's other things like that. There's alarm clock mode, so that you can lay it flat on your nightstand with the curved edge facing you while you're sleeping, so that a tiny little the time will appear on the edge, with the current weather and all that. So it's like, that's clever. That's pretty cool, And I got to say, when I used it in the hands-on, I just sort of used it for a few minutes, but it never really registered a false positive. It was very good about knowing how I was holding the phone, that it was, I was just holding the phone with my thumb. I wasn't trying to swipe, or the swipes between the main screen and the side screen were hardly ever confused. So it's very easy to use. It's a well thought out thing. We make fun of Samsung sometimes. We give Samsung a hard time a little bit about throwing stuff against the wall and hey man, maybe they'll like edge stuff and eye scrolling and hey, let's throw in a bunch of health apps that they don't want, and that's true.
It is.
But with the Note Edge, I want to say this is a little beyond that. It's not quite just an experimental thing. This has been well designed, well thought out. They took their time in getting it out. They showed they could do it in CES 13 with a prototype, and they took their time to make sure, okay, let's make sure that we get this right, so we feel confident enough to put it in a really good phone that people actually want to buy. And that's, I think, what they've done.
So somebody in the comments actually had a question. They said, did you find that the edge part of the screen to be as responsive as the normal screen? Because Daniel's saying he saw videos where the curves part wasn't as smooth. So did you notice the same thing? Was there a hardware or software lag? Anything involved with, I guess, swiping or interacting with the edge screen?
Not a lag. I try to think if there was anything where maybe it didn't quite respond in a way I expected. There was a buggy moment, and I'm attributing it a bit to probably pre-production software, where the scroll would kind of restart abruptly. It wasn't behaving like how I would expect the new scroll to behave. It didn't have me worried. I mean, we're probably a few weeks away from release, so it's probably not quite the final software. But I mean, with any new tech, there's probably going to be some bugs as they kind of just get the APIs right and stuff. So as a piece of hardware, I think it's going to work great. Will every app work flawlessly? Probably not. But there'll be some shakedown for some of that stuff. But I don't think early adopters are going to be that disappointed.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel, for that question. Let's move on to the Gear S smartwatch. This actually debuted last week, although they showed it on stage yesterday at IFA and in Beijing and in New York. So there are some special features that come along with the Gear S. And I wanted to open up to both you guys and kind of discuss what some of those special features are.
You take it, Christina.
Well, it's curved. No, I mean, they obviously, I think the design is one of the big things. This is their, I guess, technically third attempt at kind of doing a good design for the Gear line of smartwatches, and I think that this is certainly a much better looking smartwatch than they've had before. It's curved, and it takes a lot of elements that we really liked with the Gear Fit, I think, but puts it on your wrist. It feels like it's more like jewelry, I think, rather than just being kind of a hunk of plastic and metal on top of a plastic or leather band. So I mean, I think that's the big thing, is they've definitely taken that curved OLED screen technology that they've been working on for a long time and really kind of taken that to the task. to the test. It's also fairly more powerful. It won't replace your smartphone, but one of the big things with it is that it can work without having to have a smartphone. It has its own radio in it, which basically means that you can go out running with it and get your text messages and get other alerts on it. And that's been something we've been seeing from people. We started seeing it at CES 2014. I think even before then, there were some companies that were talking about the idea of having a wearable that could live on its own. And there are certainly other companies that are working on doing things like that. Intel's working on some stuff. There are other smartwatch makers. But because it has a SIM card a chip on it, you can get all of your texts and notifications without having to have your smartphone present. And that's pretty remarkable. I think that's certainly the big thing that kind of sets it apart is that, this is the first smartwatch that can exist without a smartphone.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I was a little unenthusiastic about it, that particular aspect, just because at this point in smartwatch history, we're still carrying around phones.
Absolutely.
But, someone I was talking on This Week in Tech yesterday, and someone, one of my co-hosts who was a woman, brought up the fact that for women that's actually a pretty good feature because of a general lack of pockets.
Definitely.
So there are more situations when you don't necessarily have your phone with you, which is like, okay, that's fair. It's too bad the design doesn't quite sync up with that audience, because
no, I was going to say it's right. On the one hand, it's great that you can get rid of one device, but it's so huge. With the regular gears look ridiculous in my hand. I can't even imagine how the Gear S is going to look. I just imagine it but yeah. I think that idea is good. I think it's also it's weird in that I almost feel like if you took that capability but had it in a form factor like the Gear Fit, that would almost be better because for me working out, one of the biggest pains is still having to have my phone on me.
Yeah, well, there you go. I totally agree. With working out, exercise, that's a huge use case for these things. And I could see it for, you get a Gear Fit size one for ladies, and the Gear S would probably be very, I think men it's big. It's more of a male watch. But yeah, absolutely. I hate the whole idea that you got to have your phone with you and sort of have it strapped here, and you still need it somewhere if you want to do, any kind of interactive stuff like a Nike thing with social, any kind of sharing of your workout. So this kind of device definitely opens up that possibility. And, they just got to make sure those apps can really sort of interact properly. You have a workout app, and, you can quickly do your, I've got to sort of try this use case because I've actually never done it apart from some simple music. But Samsung's the only one where you could actually do it with just a watch.
Right.
Great. So we've talked about the Note 4, we've talked about the Note Edge, and the Gear S. And now we're actually going to talk about the Gear VR, Samsung's new virtual reality product.
Simulation.
Yeah, there you go. I keep showing it how it looks right now. That's exactly out of the box right there. So I know Lance Ulanoff, who is not with us, had done the hands-on review. But is this the real deal? Pete, I'm going to start with you. What are some of your thoughts? Did you get your hands on it yesterday in New York?
Try it out. I did. I checked it out, wore it for a little while, checked out some of the apps. It's cool. It's really, the VR thing. Whether if you've never done Oculus and, experienced that kind of thing, it's very similar. What it is the thing is, the most important thing about it is that it's not standalone. You need a Galaxy Note 4 to work with this, and only that phone will work with the Gear VR. So basically, you take your Galaxy Note 4, you slip it in, on the front, and the phone is facing you like that, and the accessory automatically detects the phone automatically detects the accessory, and it knows exactly what to do, to give you kind of a binocular view of a virtual world. And it looks pretty cool. Right out of the gate, when I first put it on, it occurred to me right then, and I noted this in my piece, that this is the case for 4K in phones. Because Quad HD is awesome. It's the number one, it's the most sophisticated you can get in terms of a phone display, and it's huge. It's 3.5 million pixels. It's 2560 by 1440 or something.
Yep, it's the exact same resolution as a 27-inch iMac. To put that.
Yeah, it's mental.
A 27-inch iMac.
when you
on
get those
a 5-inch screen.
pixels this close, it's not a normal viewing distance. You can actually see the pixels. So you need 4K. I mean, you need 4K on that phone if you're going to do VR with it. We've been assured by certain processor makers that is coming. We're going to see 4K phones probably within the next 6 months to a year. That said, it's a great experience. I mean, you got a screaming processor in there. I think it's the Snapdragon 805 with 3 gigs of RAM. So that's huge. And so when I was doing stuff, the best experience. I mean, first there was like this flyover of New York, and you could look up and down and this all around in a 360-degree view. There was a game where you could shoot. You could blast alien fighters in an asteroid belt, which was pretty cool. And then there was this neat thing, and this was more to show off Samsung's partnership with content providers. They had an immersive environment designed by Marvel, so you're in Tony Stark's lab, Iron Man's lab, and there wasn't a lot there. I mean, you could basically talk to Jarvis, and Dar Jarvis's robot assistant, and kind of look at things and try on a different helmet than the regular Iron Man helmet. But that gives you a taste of like, well, this is just the beginning, and given enough time, development, and money, you could have a whole Avengers game, obviously, where you could fly around like Iron Man, use repulsors, or whatever. And the last thing I'll say is that with VR, and this is the same thing with Oculus and these other experiences, you get so immersed in what's going on with your eyes, you immediately want more. Like I started reaching out with my hands, and you're like, oh right, my hands aren't strapped to anything. There's no possibility of that. And then, well, they're just starting to work on that kind of thing. They've announced partnerships recently with Leap Motion and SDKs to bring gesture control in. And there's the Mio armband that will probably get involved at some point. So, this is all being thought about. And Samsung with this is clearly like they want to get on the ground floor, get people developing, not just for Oculus, because this is a partnership with Oculus they're doing, but also to make sure that their stuff is in developers' minds too as they do this stuff. And not many people are probably going to have it, but if you think about it, this is going to be like the first way in the mainstream people will be able to get this. There will be a significant audience for the Galaxy Note 4, and within that audience, well, a good chunk of people are probably going to buy this thing because it's going to be, they haven't set a price, but since it doesn't have its own computer per se, it's not going to be that expensive. It's probably like I'm guessing here, probably a few $100. And I could see a few people just picking it up. So it's not the worst idea. It's okay.
No, I mean, I totally agree. In fact, I mean, to me, I think that there's probably a significant number of people, I mean, not enough to maybe push corners in terms of the phone adoption, but there's probably a significant number of people in just the VR community who will buy a Galaxy Note 4 or a Galaxy Edge specifically because they can use it with this sort of headset. Because it's a big draw. The ability to be able to have mobile games is awesome. I mean, there's been a whole community in the Oculus community of people who've been building iOS and more to the point, Android has actually been bigger on this end, games that are kind of compatible with Oculus where people can kind of mod their devices and can kind of mod different things to have it hooked up and playing games off of their device rather than having to use a computer, which is how you do it now. And so already game developers have been kind of building in for these sorts of VR experiences. And now if you have a really, if you have like the biggest phone manufacturer having a headset that will allow you to, pop directly into this community as well as popping into these experiences like the Tony Stark stuff and potentially with these further partnerships with people like Leap Motion, I think it really opens up the doors for a lot of other things. I thought it's really interesting, Pete, that you said the exact same thing that I said the first time I spent time in the Oculus, which was I wanted more. Like it's already so completely taking over your visuals that you start to move your hands around, you start to move your body around, and you want the entire experience. And I think that that's one of the reasons why Facebook bought Oculus and one of the reasons why I think there's been this big kind of surge in a lot of the VR space is that everybody I talk to has that same sort of experience where they go into it, and even if they go in like skeptical, they walk away thinking, not only did I love this, but I wanted it to go to the next level. And having things, with the fact that you can just plug in, a phone into a headset, I think gets us closer and closer to that kind of level. So I really think that it's a smart deal, and I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm still waiting for my Oculus to ship. I'm like way back on like the back ordered list or whatever. But it was one of those things where, especially if they can get in like the $200 price point. Again, we don't know prices, but I'm guessing that would probably that would be a pretty sweet spot. That would be enough for a lot of people to be like, you know what, I need a new phone. I might as well get a Note 4 because I can also get this accessory and really be like in the future.
Yeah, I'm still going to guess 300 just because I think that they want it to go. They want to have a place to go with the pricing. You know what I mean? So it's like
That's true.
We'll start at 300 and then the next one will be 200 or 250. But well, total guesses at this point. These are not confirmed at all.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I mean, I think it is worth noting what I'm kind of looking forward to from the hacking side. I know that it doesn't seem like it's possible now, but you never know. The actual, like the latest shipping version of the Oculus is actually a Note 3. Is what's powering the whole thing. So what I would be very intrigued to see once we see more of these goggles is if somebody would be able to hook anything up to it so that, maybe use the HDMI out or something from, the phone itself to somehow get a connection to a computer if you could somehow reverse engineer, the VR goggles and the Note 4 to also be kind of like a full-fledged Oculus. So that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Yeah, let's say make it happen.
Yeah, seriously, modders, get on that. Let's mod the the Galaxy VR so that we can have it can be like the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Great. So you've heard Christina and Pete get on it. So we've discussed the Note 4, the Note Edge, the Gear S, and the Gear VR. And so this was obviously a big week for Samsung. But I don't think we could end this Hangout without kind of addressing the elephant in the room, or maybe the apple in the room, because next Tuesday is going to be quite the big day for the tech world, as Apple has their next launch event. So.
Oh, Apple's having an event?
Yeah, isn't that kind of crazy? And we haven't heard anything about that. Yeah.
I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah. So, how is Samsung obviously had, like I said, had a big week this week. What is going to happen about this conversation next week? It's obviously just going to disappear, correct?
Yeah, everyone's going to forget about everything that was unveiled yesterday. It's like gone.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, like not even like trying to be flip. By Sunday, this entire conversation around anything happening at IFA is completely over.
Yeah.
If not earlier, but no later than Sunday, the entire tech conversation it's already kind of shifted because of all the various iCloud stuff and people, on the news really even positioning the Samsung stuff as Apple versus Samsung, and is Samsung going to be able to take any of the shine away from Apple's announcement? Which to me, you're already answering your own question by mentioning a competitor while talking about Samsung. Clearly the answer is no to that, and that sucks. And that's it's unfair to a certain extent, but the world is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think that Samsung was smart to basically get out and try to dominate things as much as they could and put out a lot of news, but the vacuum being what it is, and with Apple it most certainly is a vacuum. Everything is going to be all about Apple next week. Now the week after that we might get into some comparisons, but I think that the bulk of the conversation is going to be dominated by Apple, especially if they release anything in the wearable space.
Well, I definitely think it's going to be dominated, but I mean in the context of if they're going to bring up anyone else, I mean it's going to be Samsung.
Oh yeah, they're going to bring up
is because of what Apple is going to announce. Now, obviously, it's all rumor, but I mean, it's pretty solid rumor that they're going to have 2 iPhones and one of them is going to be a phablet. And as I was wrote about yesterday, that Samsung basically with this, and already did, but they own the phablet space. They're phablet kings. It's their empire. So this is one of those rare cases where Apple is kind of like the visiting team, though that's not at all really a disadvantage to them. I mean, we know Apple, and we know they're not going to put out a shitty product. I mean, just point blank. I mean, if they're going to put out a big iPhone, it's going to be a good iPhone. And again, all rumor and no one's confirmed anything, but I don't see them doing anything else other than having the exact same internals in both new iPhones. So they're both this supercharged new device, and you just pick your screen, the same strategy they did with the iPad. So this is going to be like their, if Apple doesn't have flagships and secondary things, but it's going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Galaxy Note 4, and there's going to be that clear comparison of like, okay, the Note 4 is the state-of-the-art Quad HD, blah blah blah. Apple's is roughly the same size. It has all this stuff. I doubt. I gotta ask Christina, I don't think just because Apple doesn't do the spec game, I don't think it's going to be Quad HD.
No.
I think Apple's just going to do something that's awesome. I mean, full HD is fine for almost all applications. Yeah, I take it you agree.
No, I agree. I think that I could see them doing. So what's 1136 times 2? That's yeah. So I don't think it's going to be 2640 by 1440. I think it might be 1136 by 960
Well, that's
times
getting
2.
pretty close. That's
So I mean, it actually might be. If they doubled the current resolution, they might do that. But I think they might just do a 3 times the resolution, which would be above 1920, but would not be as high as Quad HD. But again, they don't get into the spec game, and you're also going to take into account that even if they do bring out a 5.5-inch device, that's still going to be smaller, albeit a smidgen than whatever the Note 4 size is. So you might still have technically higher pixel density on the Note 4, but it's still going to be considered what Apple says is Retina. Yeah, but I don't expect them to kind of get into that game. But I think it'll really depend. John Gruber did the math, and I think that some of his math figures sound about right. I think it's either going to be super, super, super high, like stratosphere high, or it's going to be slightly less, or slightly more than 1920, but slightly less than what the Quad HD screens are doing.
Gotcha.
I think those are basically our 2 takeaways at that point. It's also possible, I think, that the bigger screen might have a lower resolution than like what the 4.7 is. Like the 4.7 would have, the highest kind of pixel rate, and then the 5.5-inch might keep the same resolution as that device. And so, basically kind of saying, okay, you can get a bigger screen, but we're not going to increase the pixel density.
One of the reasons we haven't heard any pricing on the Samsung stuff, and it's obviously also early.
Absolutely.
Launch, but everyone's waiting to hear what the iPhone's going to cost. So it's like, because we know Apple always announces prices. They always announce prices. The only thing that might not get a price on Tuesday is the iWatch.
Right.
Which, by all reports, is actually going to get an unveiling, which I did 2 weeks ago. I didn't think that was going to be likely, but now everyone seems to be saying.
Totally do. I'm with you. Now I totally do. I don't think I would have thought that they wouldn't have unveiled something if they couldn't release it within like 2 weeks. And now I'm thinking that they're going to kind of play it like they did actually with the original iPad. If you remember that, the iPad was January 30th, and then it didn't come out until April 1st.
Yeah, it's my theory on that is similar to the iPad, but I mean now it's even different in terms of the world and the tech world. It's that everything leaks, and they know this too. And it's like if you do the launch a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks out, there's going to be like your surprise will be spoiled. I mean there's guaranteed. So
and
it's like they really want to do something special. They really want to surprise. They really want to set a tone, and it's like you have to do it 2 months out. I mean, that's the only way, because otherwise it's going to be in boxes somewhere,
No, totally.
Like, so,
but
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also feel like part of the thing is almost to be like a game on mofo with any of the other smartwatch companies that are going to try to come out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. Like, there's a lot of people planning for CES.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain advantage. I think that in general, I like Apple's philosophy of not announcing anything until there's, it's ready to ship, the day they announce it or ready to ship a week later. But I do feel like there's sometimes, and the iPad is a great example of this, there's an advantage of pre-announcing. The iPad, it launched with like 4,000 apps, right? The iWatch could do something similar by giving, a big head start. But it also, I think, says to anybody else who's wanting to get in the smartwatch or the wearable space, like, look out. This is what you're competing against. Like, don't try to, sugarcoat like with you. It's really cute that you're trying.
I will wager a lot of plans for wearables at CES after next week are going to get torn up,
completely
thrown out. Some are going to be canceled. Some are going to be changed. Some are going to be like completely pivoted. I mean, it's going to be like a lot of people have. It's past a lot of deadlines. I mean, you got to know what you're doing at CES now, and a lot of people still have no idea what to do because, if Apple comes out with the wearable for the future, well, it's like, well, I either develop for that or I do something better or, like, what are you going to do? So I want to get back to pricing for a minute, though, because it's like this is going to be new for Apple in that, and again, this is, all in rumor, but it's like they're going to have 2 state-of-the-art iPhones. There's not going to be the cheap one and the good one like they did last year.
Right.
There's going to be 2, like, models that are, like, the new one. So do you do the regular pricing for, the 6 and then plus $100 for the 6L? That seems the most likely thing to me, but what do you think?
That's exactly what I'm thinking, and isn't that? I mean, that's basically how it worked on the iPad Air and the iPad Mini Retina, didn't it?
Yeah.
Is that basically like isn't the Air?
Plus 100.
Yeah, the iPad Air was $100 more, right? Than the Mini
Yeah.
Retina.
That's right. It's still it's $399 for the actual Mini Retina, I believe.
Right. It's $399 for the Mini Retina.
Actually, let's look this up.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe they are the same price. This is great radio or great video.
Yeah, this is going to, like, with Samsung, I think they're going to basically have a similar thing with the Note and the Note Edge. Only with the Edge, there's no clear, like, what do we do with this? Is it a $50 premium? Is it a $100 premium? I think it's a premium, but I think that's going to be a little more complex, and it's going to be. I think they're going to have to go with either $250 with contract or $200 even, because you couldn't go all the way up to $400 or
no, totally. So the iPad Mini Retina is $399, not cellular. The iPad Air is $499, so it's $100 difference.
You were right.
So we were right. So I think that's exactly what they're going to do with the iPad 6 or the iPhone 6 and the 6L or whatever they call it. So it'll be $199 standard and then $299 for the bigger one. And I mean, that makes the most sense. I think that that's probably the best pricing. And what's funny, I was going to say, speaking of the pricing and positioning, is that this is one of the few times when, again, like Apple, because they're entering, Samsung's territory with the phablet or whatnot, but it's kind of in not just them having a bigger device, but with a few exceptions, the Note. This year was the first year that I think the Note has been differentiated to this degree from the Galaxy S. The stylus aside, typically they've been very, very similar products, screen size aside, and so the pricing on them, that's one of the reasons why the Note has been able to sell for a little bit more money. So it's kind of interesting that Apple has these two, it's what we're expecting to have basically two identical products, at different price points, because that's been something that Samsung has done for a long time.
What is the most important feature to you in the iWatch? What do they have to get right?
Battery life.
Number one, I'm with you. Yeah. I'm a little worried about the design, just because I think their one-size-fits-all approach is going to have challenges in wearables that it doesn't have elsewhere.
Yeah, which is kind of why I'm expecting them to maybe have like a male and a female version, to be honest. I would not be surprised to see them do that at all. And frankly, I think that they should. I'm tired of everybody having a one-size-fits-all approach for wearables, and they're all designing them for men's wrists.
But you're not into this?
No, I'm not, because it looks like crap on my wrist. And the thing is that women just as many women own smartphones as men, and the potential for smartwatch, I think, for women, especially if you make it attractive, is actually bigger in some in some capacities. And as Apple has proven how many women buy iPhones. Having a female or a smaller wrist-centric option could do extremely well for them. So I hope that they do, a big, small version of the watch. And maybe they don't want to come down gender lines. Maybe they don't want to call it the iWatch W or whatever. But like, or the L series would be the lady series.
The iWatch his and hers.
Exactly. But if they don't want to get that gender specific, just having a smaller face and then a bigger face, I think could work. But I think that
the pink watch band making.
Dude, that they're gonna with Burberry, with Angela Arendt on board. Burberry's gonna make like their own bands, the luxury in the potential for luxury, making money off of luxury on the iWatch alone is staggering. And I will go to Nordstrom and spend bajillions of dollars on accessories. I will spend 4 times the price of my iWatch, I guarantee you, on accessories for my iWatch.
You heard it here, Apple.
Yeah.
Christina Warren is going to single-handedly get the iWatch accessories market a boost here.
Oh, without a doubt. Like, I can't wait.
So if you just tuned in within the last 10 minutes, I promise you there is some Samsung conversation, about 40 minutes of it before this. But I can assure you, if you are interested in the Apple conversation, we will be having a Mash Talk next week that will be discussing everything that happens next week. But we have about a minute left, so I want to give you each 30 seconds to just give your final thoughts on Samsung's week. So, Christina, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So, I mean, I think actually they had a really solid offering. I mean, I think that it's tough, coming in a week before Apple's announcing what they're going to announce. But I feel like the Note 4 looks like a great phone. I really like the design of the Note Edge. The S doesn't do the Gear S doesn't do much for me, but I feel like this is really good direction for wearables to go in to just have a single standing watch. And I think that with the VR, this proves that Samsung is one of the few companies that can take these types of risks and do these sorts of partnerships, even if the payoff isn't huge sales. I love that they are trying, they're taking these directions. And so, I mean, I think that, especially if we compared it to Samsung's spring announcements, which to me were kind of meh, I feel like their fall announcements are really, really strong. And I think that says good things for them going forward.
Great. And Pete?
Yeah, well, with the Note 4, I mean, the other products are pretty buzzworthy, but the Note 4 is really the product that's going to carry their fall. And they did a great job. I mean, they knew that Apple was going to come out with something big, so they threw everything they possibly could. They raised the bar as far as they possibly could for this product. And they've did a great job. I mean, whatever Apple throws at them, I mean, Samsung is confident that they have, like, this audience, and this audience's attention. For the big screen phones, they're huge in Asia. Other people are starting to like them here. There's a certain number of people that have kind of like, okay, I guess big screen phones are what I have to have now, so I'll get one. And the Note 4, I mean, it's really one of the best phones you can buy today, with the caveat that final judgment until we actually have a full review. But I mean, it was very, it's technologically a very impressive piece of work. So the other stuff is gravy for them, and it's pretty good gravy. But I mean, it's okay. Note 4, game on Apple.
Great. So first off, a big thanks to both Pete and Christina, as always, giving their expertise. And then thank you to all of you who watched this live, as well as those who are going to be watching the archived version of this. Let's continue the conversation on Twitter with the hashtag #MashTalk. Let us know if you're going to be buying any of these Samsung products, or if you're just very excited about Apple's event next week. And we'll see you guys all again, probably same time next week or earlier, to talk about Apple. Take care.
Take it easy.